Hello, boils and ghouls, and welcome to another episode of Comic Crypt, our month-long celebration of the best in horror comics. And for this, our second episode of October, we have a story so dark, so chilling, that it will twist and torment you all the way down. Wait a second. Second episode of October. That means it's the second week of October. Oh my god, the new Power of X came out. So, how about the next one, everybody? So yes, let me go ahead and get this out of the way right now. As you saw in that opening, it is the middle of Thorgy-ween, our month-long celebration of everything spooky and scary from the world of pop culture, which means that normally we would only be doing episodes of Comic Crypt this entire month long, where we only talk about spooky comics. But yeah, man, I'm not going to not talk about the conclusion to House of X and Power of X. That would be insane to not do something like that. This series has been amazing. This has been one of the high points of not just this year, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm going to go ahead and say it. This has been one of the high points of my entire comic book reading life. I have absolutely loved these two series. And what's crazy is that this is just the setup for more things to come. But there's so much to unpack in just this setup that's got me excited. You saw in all the episodes of our House of X and Power of X coverage, I was coming in here and just brainstorming non-stop about what could this possibly mean? What could that possibly mean? Oh, I think it could be this. I think it could be that over here. And like just the first issue alone, I had more theories going about what could be happening in this book than I have had about almost any other series that goes the entire span of a whole year. That is phenomenal that they were able to create something like that. And I say they were able to create something like that because, yes, I think that's what they want. I think they wanted this to be a series where every single issue you were supposed to come out here and just start brainstorming. You were supposed to come in here and dissect 1,000 different things in here. I think that they dribbled out there all the information at the exact right rate. So that way, the audience would never know what was going on. But they would think that they would know what was going on. Because it's incredible to me how I would form a theory about something and almost the exact next issue, they would address that theory I had and go, yeah, no, you're completely wrong about that thing. Here's a bunch of other things for you to start thinking about. Oh, well, now I think it's this thing. That's cool. Come back next week. Here's another thing for you to think about that completely disproves the last thing that you thought. This has been an incredible pacing. This has been one of the best paced books that I have ever read. This has been one of the best formatted books I've ever read. This has been one of those thought out books I've ever read. I freaking love House of X and Power of X. But that doesn't mean that I still don't have other things to say about this book. That doesn't mean that the theories have stopped. That doesn't mean that there isn't stuff to talk about in this book. I'm not just going to come in here and give some blanket praise about, oh my goodness, that's amazing. We need to talk about why this is amazing. But before we get into that, I also do just want to come in here and say real quick, over the last weekend, I was at New York Comic Con, and I just want to say, you guys, you're great. Thank you all so much to every single person at New York Comic Con who came up to me and just said how much they love this channel, how much it means to them, especially, I know this is comic class, and I know that was New York Comic Con. So I should be talking about, oh yeah, all the people who absolutely loved the comic book videos that we do. The number one compliment that I got was people loving the movie reviews and loving Thorgy-ween in particular, which is great because Thorgy-ween, our month-long celebration of Halloween, it's the thing I look forward to the most every single year. I love doing Thorgy-ween. So to hear almost every single person that I talked to at New York Comic Con say that they were so excited for another year of Thorgy-ween, that they were loving what we were doing this year, that they love what we did last year, man, that means a lot. So just want to thank all you guys out there for that. Now on to the crazy theories. Now it's only been about 3 weeks since the last time that we talked about House of X or Power of X, but so much has happened, it feels like that was a year ago. It feels like those discussions were about a completely different book. And a lot of that has to come down to what happened in the final House of X, which came out last week. And it's very odd because this week, Power of X number 6 came out, and that was another one of those books that was highlighted in red. which means that they came in here and they said, yes, this is one of the important ones. This is the one that gives you all the information that you need to know. And yes, we did get one very big piece of information in here, but it feels like what happened in House of X was an even bigger deal. And the reason why is because where House of X number 6 leaves off, it almost feels like the end of the X-Men. And I don't mean like, you know, how Marvel tried to end the X-Men not that long ago, where it was like, oh yeah, you know, Terrigen Mist, yeah, that whole thing in there. Yeah. No, I mean like if you had to come in here and say, listen, the X-Men, something happened, Fox came in here and took them all back again, we have to just get rid of them. We have to get rid of the X-Men, but we're going to do it in a way that pays respect to the X-Men. We're going to do it in that way that will leave the X-Men fans feeling good at the end. This feels like the perfect end to it. Like, if all the X-Men stories were going to come to an end right here, and you need one final issue, one final image to go out on, House of X number 6 feels like that perfect spot. Feels like if they just put a big "the end" at the end of all that, it would be just like one of those big just big tears start dripping out of your eyes, and you go, oh my god, it's my heart, I can't take it anymore. The X-Men have finally found peace, and they're finally being left alone, and they never have to worry about anything ever again. I mean, it'd be sad to see them go, but I mean, if they had to go, that is the best happy ending they could possibly have gotten. What happened in House of X number 6? Because let me go ahead and sum it up for you guys. What happened in that issue is that we finally got to see the moment when Professor X came in here and he declared, okay, we're going to set up this brand new island, and you guys, you gotta pay respect to us, you gotta do what we want you to do. And then we actually see how that island works. We've been getting these little hints of a governing body in Krakoa, but now we've actually seen the governing body. And it's like every single face of the X-Men, not just the X-Men, but mutants, period, that we have gotten. It's like the face of all mutants right there in that one moment being summed up by the governing body of Krakoa. Because you've got 4 different bodies in there. You've got Magneto, Professor X, Apocalypse. If you wanted to pick 3 leaders of all mutants across the entire span of comics, that'd be the 3 faces you would get. Those are the 3 big muckety mucks who have been running around leading different groups of mutants probably since forever. So alright, you got them. Then you've got the X-Men. You've got Storm, you've got Jean Grey, and you've got Nightcrawler. Okay, you want to get some people in there who really kind of represent like the heart of the X-Men? You know, feels like Scott Summers should be in there, but they did give Scott Summers a role. They said, Scott, he's not a governing body. Scott, he's not a politician. He is the captain. He is the guy who leads the troops. So that's his role. And they did come in here and they said, yes, we also have all these different generals, all these different captains who are going to be leading our forces, but Scott Summers is right there at the top. He is the main guy leading that team. Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, you know what? As a Scott Summers fan, I'm happy with that. I am happy with that position. But if you have the X-Men over here, you've got the good mutants on this side, you need the opposite side of that coin. You need that part of this ruling council that is going to reflect the bad mutants. So you've got Mr. Sinister, you have Exodus, and you have Mystique. Mystique is on this team for a very interesting reason that we will get to in a moment. So now you've got the big mutant leaders, you've got the good mutants, you've got the bad mutants. Now you kind of need the chaotic neutral mutants, those ones who are just in this for themselves, meaning the Hellfire Club. So you've got Emma Frost, you've got Sebastian Shaw, and then you have the Red King. And the Red King has not been named. And I looked at that initially and went, oh god, it's another mystery. I don't know if I can do another mystery at this point. But in today's issue of Power of X, they came in here and they said, yeah, we don't quite have everyone yet because Emma still hasn't named a Red King. Ah, so they haven't picked someone yet. I like that. I like that because I was looking at all the mutants who are represented so far, and I went, I have no idea who this last mutant could possibly be. I can't name another big muckety muck in the mutant economy out there who could possibly represent the Red King. They haven't been chosen yet. So it's not some unknown factor. It's someone who we've already seen, and now we just have to go, who is she going to pick? And that's very interesting. I'm going to be excited to see how they end up choosing that final member of this ruling council. I think that's going to be a really cool little couple of issues that lead up to that big reveal. So, that's it. We now have the big ruling team. And then we've also got, this sort of secondary ruling team, which is Krakoa itself and Cypher, who is Krakoa's translator. Which, that's important. They're there. They gotta see at the table. Hell, Krakoa is the table. But those are the main 12 characters who you need to know about. And we get to see how they establish laws here. And we get to see them basically make the 3 commandments of Krakoa. And there comes a moment in which they finally address something that had been a big problem of mine, which is that Sabretooth started this whole thing off by murdering some people. And the X-Men just came in here and went, hey, we know he killed a bunch of humans. Yeah, that doesn't mean anything to us. He didn't kill anybody in Krakoa, so... And I've been looking at that going, okay, I understand that the entire point of this series is that the X-Men basically saying, we're fed up with the way that humans have been treating us. And I can get behind that, but when it gets to the point where it's like, yeah, now we're going to start killing the humans, I can't quite get behind that. I can't get behind you guys sweeping that under the rug. And there have been so many mysteries here, and so many interesting decisions, we'll just put it like that, that did make me look at it and go, have the X-Men actually gone bad? Like, are we looking at more like the Brotherhood here rather than the X-Men? We even saw them come in here and just get Sabretooth out of prison and just look at all the humans like, you can't even touch us. Well, they did. And I saw so many people applauding that moment. I don't think you guys knew what you were applauding. You were applauding Sabretooth going, yeah, I'm going to kill all you humans. Now, I didn't want any part of that. But they came in here, and while they were establishing the rules of Krakoa, one of the laws was no killing humans. I mean, listen, you can't kill a mutant, but we have now established that it is possible for us to come back from the dead. We have found a way to finally defeat death. You kill us, we just come right on back. But humans don't get that. Humans don't get to come back. So that is one of the biggest crimes of all, if you kill something that can't come back. So they made that one of the rules. Okay. Alright, that's actually kind of good. Like, thou shalt not kill, that's pretty much a staple of any good law. So, okay, the X-Men might still be on the side of the good guys now. Okay, and then they bring in Sabretooth. And they tell him, yeah, so you broke one of the laws. And I know that we made it look like we were on your side because it was us versus the humans on that, but we ain't on your side. Nah, and we can't have someone like you who's just gonna mess this up for everyone. We got a good thing going on right now. We can't have you wrecking this whole thing. But, if we imprison you, you might escape. But if we kill you, then the system we set up will just bring you right back. So we're going to now sentence you to eternity inside Krakoa. And they had Krakoa open up and swallow Sabretooth, and it just went, yes, you'll be trapped inside Krakoa. No light, no communication, no nothing, just trapped down there for as long as we reign, which will be eternity. They basically just banished Sabretooth to limbo. Not actual limbo, since that is also a place where the mutants are capable of going to, but more of the figurative limbo. Yeah, they just banished this dude to the Shadow Realm. And I looked at that and went, oh my goodness. They are upholding laws. Very extremely, though. And man, it was kind of chilling what they did to him, but it was kind of chilling what Sabretooth did. So, yeah. I kind of came back around on the X-Men. Like, I had this entire time just been balancing on that tightrope. I just been standing up there like, okay, alright, maybe they're villains. Oh, maybe they're so good, guys. Oh, I don't know, just going teetering back and forth. And this was the issue where I went, okay, alright, they're different. They're all new, they're all different. But the X-Men are still the X-Men. A little bit more extreme, but still the X-Men. Okay, I can get behind this. I'm okay with this now. And I'm also totally okay with this because I know how Jonathan Hickman works. I know that Sabretooth ain't done just yet. We'll get to that in just a moment. But after this was over with, we saw all the X-Men going out there, and they just started partying. The X-Men just went out there, and they went, we finally got Krakoa, We finally got a governing system. We've got everything that we could possibly want. We have our own little slice of paradise right here. And they just went out there and celebrated. And you saw all these X-Men coming together and just being friends with each other. You saw longtime rivals, longtime enemies just going, listen, man, it's all in the past. Krakoa is a fresh start for all of us. Like, you saw Scott Summers and Jean Grey and Wolverine just hanging out and getting along together. You saw Jean Grey and Emma Frost getting along together. You saw Wolverine grab a beer and take it over to Gorgon, some guy who has tried to kill him more times than we can count. And they're like, all right, I guess we're all in this together now. It's all right, mutants living at peace with each other. And it ends with Magneto and Professor X just standing out there looking at the stars going, look at what we have made. That is the perfect place for the X-Men story to end. The X-Men have found their own paradise where humans cannot mess with them ever again. They're safe, and they're all getting along, and they're all here in peace. That is a wonderful place for the X-Men story to end. The X-Men story does not end there. The X-Men story still hasn't even begun. This is all still the setup for this stuff to come in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men run. Which means this is all just the setup for them to get knocked back down. Because I know how Jonathan Hickman works. I was looking at this going, this is a beautiful place for the X-Men story to end, which is going to make it really heartbreaking when it doesn't. Remember, Jonathan Hickman is the guy who, when he started working on the Avengers, he had that moment where we're going to make this an Avengers world. We're going to create a perfect system for the Avengers where we can come in here and solve any problem and be Earth's mightiest heroes in a way that we never have been before. It is a bright, shining new age for the X-Men, and that series ended with Captain America and Iron Man so angry at each other, they're beating each other to death as the world is destroyed, and they're so focused on one another, they don't even care about saving the planet. Yeah. That's how high they started, where they went. And I looked at this and went, yeah, I know that's exactly what's going to happen. And I mentioned how they're not done with Sabretooth. I know there is going to be a moment. I know I am going to put money on the table right now on this one. I know there's going to be that moment where towards the end of his run, Krakoa is breaking apart. Something is happening in Krakoa. It's starting to crumble apart. All the X-Men are running around trying to figure out what to do. And you've got the leaders of the X-Men coming in here and saying, okay, we need to focus. We need to make sure that we all try and save as many people as we can. We need to get this done, act like a team. And then you're just going to see that hand reach out of the ground. You're going to see Sabretooth start clawing his way back up. And oh, he's here for revenge. Yeah, I can guarantee you something like that is going to happen. Maybe not exactly like how I described, but you're going to see that moment where Sabretooth comes back and he is mad. He is angry and he wants revenge. And just to repeat myself, as I said, this feels like the perfect ending to an X-Men story, but this is not the ending to an X-Men story. It's the beginning of an X-Men story. And there are still several questions that we have about this beginning to this X-Men story. And one of them is, yeah, so this whole like bringing the X-Men back to life thing over and over and over again, I still have some questions about that, and it still seems kind of odd that every X-Men is agreeing to this, and they're all totally fine with this, and also, weren't some of these X-Men looking different the last time that we saw them? And there at the end, as I said, if this was the end of a storyline, seeing things like Wolverine and Scott Summers and Jean Grey, all of them just getting along, and then Jean Grey and Emma Frost getting along, and Wolverine and Gorgon getting along, that would be beautiful. That would be amazing. But as I said, I still have questions about the X-Men and why all of them are behaving like this. So I have used the term pod people several times over at this point. I have raised questions about maybe they've had a little bit of mind control going on to make them all agree to act like this. And seeing all these bitter rivals, all these people who aren't quite that fond of each other, just being 100% okay with each other, it does raise questions. It does kind of play into that theory that I had about, are we sure that Wolverine's actually Wolverine, that Scott Summers is actually Scott Summers? I have a couple questions about this. Like I said, I still have that feeling like we're going to get that moment where we see like the real Cyclops deep underground in Krakoa, just being held there so they can make sure that Mr. Sinister can study him. Speaking of Mr. Sinister, I have had so many questions about why have we not seen Professor X's face? Why have we not seen that dude's face? And in House of X number 6, we finally started to see his face. We finally saw him without the helmet on. We saw like that last moment before he put the helmet on for the final time, before he decided to just never take that thing off. And we saw like the back of his head. Okay, still bald, still looks just like him. We saw from here down, alright, still looks just like him. Granted, we've been seeing that this entire time, but okay. Still looks like Professor X from there. Still looks like Professor X from here in the back. We still didn't see this. We still didn't see this. And all I could think is, what on earth could be hidden right here? What on earth could be hidden right freaking here? Yeah, that's right. It wouldn't be a House of X or Power of X discussion if I didn't have a crazy theory. And I will get more into that crazy theory in just a moment, because now it's time to talk about Power of X number 6. This was the issue where we got the final last big reveal, because it seemed like the X-Men were okay, because they did stop the creation of Nimrod. They did stop the big Super Sentinels that were going to take over the entire planet. Okay, so it seems like that horrible dark future that we had seen Moira go through, it had been prevented. So what do the X-Men have to worry about? We finally got an answer to what the Mysterious 6 timeline was, which is what I had kind of been thinking. Granted, I thought it was like 3 different things, but it was one of the 3 things I thought it was, which it was that X year million thing, that one where it was thousands and thousands of years in the future, and now machines had completely taken over. It got revealed that those machines that look like humans, not machines. The machines had been their pawns this entire time. We had seen futures where man had succumbed to the machines, where they went, yes, the machines are going to rule over us, but that's totally fine. As long as the machines take care of those pesky mutants, we'll obey and do whatever they say, which, as I've said, there's many metaphors you can read into in that, but that's what a good X-Men book is. One that has many layers. X-Men are like onions, everybody. So, it's not a Shrek reference I just threw into this for some reason. But it was then revealed that all this stuff about mankind succumbing to the robots and the robots ruling over mankind as they fought the mutants, not what was actually happening. No, not at all. Mankind was using the robots to keep the mutants at bay so mankind would have time to experiment on themselves. Because yes, mankind knew if evolution continues, eventually there's just not going to be any of us anymore. And it's just going to be mutants. So we don't want that to happen. So we're going to end evolution. You know how evolution goes. It goes Homo sapiens, then Homo superiors. Mankind was going to create an offshoot. They were going to genetically engineer themselves to become some new race of creatures called Homo novissima, which is a term I'm pretty sure I totally mispronounced, and someone way smarter than me can tell you what that actually means. But they were going to make a split off that did not follow the course of evolution. And they were going to be eternal beings that were immensely powerful, stronger than the robots, stronger than the mutants. And they're the actual threat that we have to worry about. And we saw that in that timeline where we saw so far into the future, Moira MacTaggert was being kept inside basically a mutant zoo, where this individual called the Librarian was keeping them around just to study them. And they ended up going up to them and going, yes, tomorrow the world is going to end. The Phalanx, they're going to come and absorb us. And we're going to become one. We're going to basically become God. And that's why I have to keep you alive until after that happens. Because if you die now, this timeline is completely undone. But if you die after we join God, then we will become one with everything. Which is something I still don't quite fully understand. I'm still not entirely sure how that worked out. Yeah, that's kind of a Jonathan Hickman thing. Jonathan Hickman will tell a story where I'll be like, all right, I'm with you. Okay, so they become a robot god that exists outside of space and time. Wait, what? Okay. I mean, it's never one of those things that I look at and go, that's not how that works. It's always something that I look at and go, that's a concept that's so big, I don't know how that works. It's one of those things where I won't fully understand it until a couple of years from now, when people, again, way smarter than me, many of whom probably have doctorates in understanding Jonathan Hickman works, are going to write how exactly the Phalanx god machine that exists outside of time works, and then I'll read that and go, ah, now I see. It took me like halfway through Secret Wars before I finally understood what the hell Secret Wars was. But the librarian was telling them all this stuff because he was basically saying, yes, it is the job of everyone within post-humanity to eventually reach this point where we ascend to godhood. But that means that I won't get to study you anymore. I won't get to walk amongst you anymore. The librarian was basically the scholar. He was the one who was there to find information, and he knew this would be the end of him finding information, so he told him this basically so he could say, yeah, I can't really go against the other members of post-humanity, but, you know, you got 24 hours to find a way to kill yourself, so that way you could go against the wishes of post-humanity, which is indeed what happened. That's how that timeline ended. Moira MacTaggert went back in time, ended up starting this brand new timeline, and now we are on this final attempt of Moira MacTaggert. And she said, okay, we have lost every single time that we've tried this. We have lost every single time that we have tried to prevent post-humanity from rising up. The robots wasn't even the big deal. That was just the thing that we were telling you this entire time. That was the thing that we were telling the X-Men. That was the thing that we said, okay, you guys have to go and stop the robots. But now that that's happened, we know post-humanity's still coming, and we haven't even told them about that because we know, yeah, we've kind of failed every time. But we've now got Moira and Charles and Magneto and Apocalypse all working together. This is the first time in which all of them, every single mutant, has come and united together in order to face this threat. So this is the best shot that they got. So okay, we've got our setup now. We have our setup for what Jonathan Hickman's X-Men are going to be going up against. The rise of post-humanity. All right, we're going to see them as the villains. And we have all the X-Men united together to face against that. Not just the X-Men, but all mutants together. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they mean when they say all mutants. Because they recently released some artwork that was going to be some cards that you could collect at comic book stores that were going to feature every mutant ever. And when I heard that, oh, every mutant ever is on there, I was like, they're gonna leave a couple out. Oh my god, they have like every mutant ever on there. I was going through there and I was stunned by who they include. They had Ricochet on there. Freaking Ricochet from the Slingers was on this artwork. As the one guy out there who remembers and really enjoyed the Slingers, Marvel, please release them in a trade. Oh god, I was happy to see that. I was so excited to go like, oh my god, they're there. And oh my goodness, all the Great Lake Avengers are in here. Nobody even remembers that all the Great Lake Avengers are members of the X-Men. Or not members of the X-Men, but they're all mutants. So that was insane to see that they were popping up in there. So yes, I cannot wait to see what they mean when they say all the mutants are here now. Like, I think just Franklin Richards and Molly from The Runaways are the only ones not on Krakoa right now. But yes, that's our setup. All the mutants versus post-humanity. Awesome. But as I said, we still have a few questions in there. And one of those questions, as I said, is why have we not seen this part of Charles Xavier's face? And the only thing that I can think of that would be hidden in this particular part of his face is that Mr. Sinister diamond. Right there, center of his head. But it feels weird that they would do something like that until you start reading Moira MacTaggert's diary. They have some samples of Moira MacTaggert's diary, and it's actually kind of awesome going through there because you see her talking about everything that you have already seen happen so far in Power of X with all those flashbacks, but you also see her talking about the really big moments that have happened in the X-Men's lifespan, in their history, but now she's talking about from her perspective. Like the first time that Apocalypse appeared, she's like, yeah, I used to work with Apocalypse in a previous timeline, so this is kind of a thing, and I'm really hoping that I'll be able to use what I know to eventually recruit him to our side. So that was actually kind of awesome to see her perspective on these big moments in there. But she keeps talking about how, yes, Charles Xavier still thinks that he can work side by side with the humans. You can't. I've seen this in many different timelines. It's not going to work. This will not go down the way that he wants it to, and he will not budge on this. He really keeps remaining so ignorant about all of this. He's always so hopeful. He always believes in the best in humanity. I have to break him of this. I have to cause him to doubt. I have to eventually take control of this. And then there are other moments in her diary that are completely blacked out. Just erased with a big old Sharpie marker. Just nope, don't know what happened on that day. All redacted, cannot understand any of it. And I keep thinking, all right, we have Moira McTaggart talking about how Charles Xavier will not budge. He will not agree to go down the path that she wants him to go down, but she needs him to go down this path. And they are talking with Mr. Sinister, and Mr. Sinister is all about that genetic engineering and all about having multiple different copies of themselves and cloning and doing everything they can to basically, manipulate the genetics of other people, especially mutants. I keep thinking that maybe Moira McTaggart might have gone to Mr. Sinister and went, all right, listen, Chuck ain't moving on this one. I need your help on this. I need you to help me take control of that big old brain of his. So that way, he can then be the leading voice of the mutants that he needs to be in order to unite them all against the humans. Because as I mentioned the last time that we talked about House of X and Power of X, I can look at so many things that they have set up, and I can tell they're going to fall apart. I can tell something is not going to go right here. You can't just have the X-Men living on an island for the rest of comic book history forever, and you have certain elements in here like Krakoa, the island they're living on, goes way back with Apocalypse apparently. The two of them are BFFs. They were colleagues. They fought side by side. So when it gets to that point where Apocalypse ends up turning on the X-Men, because Apocalypse is not going to remain friends with the X-Men forever and always be on their side, who do you think Krakoa is going to side with? I'm not saying for sure it's going to happen, but that is definitely something they want you to be thinking about. I want to make that clear as well. I think this book was written so incredibly well, and it was so smart, that every single time that I come in here and go, aha, I think I figured this out, I don't think I'm beating them at this. I don't think I'm coming in here and going, aha, check out how smart I am. No, I'm coming in here and going, I think this is exactly what they want us to think. But I don't know if they want us to think it because it's actually going to happen, or because they want us to look that way when something over here is going to end up happening. Yeah, I think that every crazy theory that I have had so far about this book is exactly what they wanted me to think about this book. And that's genius. But yeah, so you've got Apocalypse over there, but you've also got Mr. Sinister in there. And I keep looking at Mr. Sinister going, Mr. Sinister has provided you with the genetic samples for all these clones of all the X-Men and all the mutants that you're creating. This really feels like you just gave Mr. Sinister an army. This really feels like you just gave Mr. Sinister an army. And there's also a moment in here in which it's talking about the process of taking the brain of a mutant and putting it in one of these new bodies. And there's a brief moment where they even mention that the person controlling all of this could possibly, theoretically, even move their own brain into a different body. I'm wondering if they already tested that. I'm wondering if Charles was like, listen, I'm the linchpin in all this. I'm the one who has to handle Cerebro. If something happens to me, then we're all in trouble. If something happens to me, then there'll be no one else capable of moving these brains around so the entire plan crumbles. Before we do this with anyone else, we gotta test it. So it might not be that, Mr. Sinister took over his body in order to make him more willing to go along with what Moira wants. It could possibly be that he had to be the very first experiment for this before they actually started testing it on other mutants. And the body that they initially created for him, wasn't entirely perfect. Maybe it did have that little Mr. Sinister diamond up there. That is the last big insane theory I have. That's it. This entire series, this entire look back at House of X and Power of X, it's been one crazy theory after another. It's been an incredible ride. I've loved hearing all of your theories out there. After our last discussion, someone contacted me on Twitter and said, what if Moira is controlling Professor X? What if Moira is Professor X? Because we still hadn't seen Moira up until this point, and I looked at that and went, I had not even thought about that, and I love that theory. Turned out it wasn't true, but welcome to the club. The club of everybody creating theories about the X-Men and House of X and Power of X that turned out to be completely fake. It's a fun club. We have great discussions in here. Yeah, so this has just been one of the best times I've ever had reading comics. Just the sheer amount of excitement that I've gotten just brainstorming everything that every single page, every single panel, every single piece of text could possibly mean. It's been so much fun, and I know there's going to be more of that coming up. But I'm now excited to see what everyone's going to do with these books, because now it's out of the hands of Jonathan Hickman, and it's going into everybody else's hands out there. Jonathan Hickman is still writing 2 books, which he always writes 2 books. He always has to get his stories divided between two different books, whether it be Fantastic Four and Future Foundation, Avengers and New Avengers. That's how this guy works. So he's going to be writing X-Men and New Mutants. And I do have to point this out real quick. As I said, I'm still not entirely sure how this whole Phalanx God machine works that exists outside of space and time, so even if Moira rebooted herself, it wouldn't count. But the New Mutants book that he's going to be writing, it's all about them going into space. Who lives out in space? The Phalanx. And what's a race of space cybernetic individuals that the New Mutants have a personal history with? The Phalanx. Yeah, I definitely think that is going to be the mission statement of that book. So I feel like that and X-Men are going to be the main ones that if you want to know what's going on, you have to read. But I keep looking at the pitches and the teams on all these books. I'm so excited to read all of them. And we are going to read all of them. And after every single issue has come out, we are going to come in here and I'm going to give you like my summary, my take, my opinions on the first issue or two of every single one of these books out there. I know that X-Men #1 comes out next week, but we do kind of have to return back to doing Comic Crypt. It's October. That's kind of what we do in October. But if you are a member of our Patreon, after X-Men #1 comes out, I will come in here and I will do a video just talking about that issue in particular. But if you're not a member of our Patreon, just wait until all these issues are out. I will come in here, give you my opinions on those all over again, as well as all the other books out there. So that way, you're not going to miss out on anything. But, you know, if you're a patron, you'll get a little bit of an early glimpse of that. Also, speaking of stuff that's coming up next week on this channel, in addition to returning to Comic Crypt, while I was at New York Comic Con, I ended up doing 2 interviews. I never actually do interviews with creators because I'm bad at it. But I did run into 2 creators who I had a really good discussion with. I thought, you know what? Let's see if they just want to do an interview, and we had a great time. We ended up getting 2 really great interviews. So in addition to Comic Crypt and the Patreon video next week, you're also going to get 2 interviews from New York Comic Con. It's going to be a big week. Big old chunky week next week. So if you guys want to see all that, make sure that you click on that subscribe button, and you can always follow me around the web on Twitter and Twitch at Professor Thorgy. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next time. Bye.